Yin 13, the master of the Tzi family, panics, and Zi Tian's vice wedding. If the Duke's mansion wants them, of course I can't stop them. I'll report to the city lord, said Yin 13. Kim Jong's face remained expressionless, but his tone was still full of politeness as he said, "Thank you. Someone, take the Thumb family, Thumb father, Thumb mother, and Thumb's second young master on a palanquin," Kim Jong ordered. After that, several of the Duke's soldiers, instead of carrying small weapons, held stretchers. These soldiers, despite their usual harsh nature, carefully lifted the Thumb family onto the palanquin, a large one capable of holding people comfortably. 6 soldiers took the palanquin and walked as if it weighed nothing, moving silently without making a sound. "Farewell," Kim Jong said. "Go slowly," Yin 13 said, bowing to send them off. From start to finish, Kim Jong didn't threaten or make any unnecessary remarks. This was because Yin 13's actions were entirely legal, having the approval of the city lord's office for the arrest. Thumb Long's father had indeed founded a wasteland and had failed to pay taxes. However, many farmers in Yuanvao City were in similar situations, yet the city lord's office hadn't investigated them, following the saying that if officials don't move, the people don't have to worry. Kim Jong's responsibility was only to protect Thumb Lang's family, and the Duke had given no other instructions. Once Kim Jong and the Duke's soldiers left, Yin 13 staggered. One of the soldiers approached and said, "Yin 13th Master, what happened? We've just sent off the family and the gang leader will be furious." "Do you know who those people were just now?" Yin 13 replied. The soldier shook his head, saying, "No idea." "They're from the Duke's mansion. Kim Jong, a trusted servant of the Duke," Yin 13 said. Immediately, the soldier's expressions changed. "Thumb Lang, that little white face, colluded with someone from the Duke's mansion?" the soldier asked. Yin 13 responded, "We can only pray that Thumb Lang's relationship with the Duke's mansion isn't too deep. It's best if he's only dealing with one of the servants there, using a bit of influence to get by. Otherwise..." "Otherwise what, Yin 13? the soldier asked anxiously. "Otherwise, they'll all go home, say goodbye to their families." "We'll be caught?" the soldier asked. "We'll die," Yin 13 said. He couldn't help but think back to his brief interactions with Thumb Long, the beautiful face, always calm and serene, even smiling. But now, Yin 13 realized there was danger hidden behind that smile. "Let's go. Report to the adopted father. If anything goes wrong, we need to prepare an escape route. We're working for those people. They can't leave us to die," Yin 13 said. Then, without further words, he immediately mounted his horse and raced at full speed towards the Black Robe Gang. Desperate to save himself, Yin 13 pushed his horse to the limit, racing towards the Black Robe Gang's base in less than an hour. The Black Robe Gang wasn't located inside Yuanvao City, but in a small fortress outside the city about 20 miles away. This fortress was close to the Yuanvao City military base, housing several hundred people. The reason for this was the new political reform, where local officials struggled to find all possible forces to counter the traditional noble family's power. Hence, even a gang like Yin Wang's openly raised their flag alongside the local military. Yin 13 arrived at the fortress quickly. If it had been a normal visit, he would have chatted with his brothers in the base, as Yin Wang had many adopted sons under his command. He would need to flatter his adopted father and win the hearts of the people to secure the greatest amount of power.
However, today, Yin 13 had no time for pleasantries. He quickly entered the base and went straight to Dian Huan's room. At that moment, Dian Huan, the gang leader, was with a beautiful woman, her skirt lying white on the floor as she kneeled by the table. Upon seeing Yin 13's arrival, Dian Huan instinctively reached for a cup, preparing to throw it. But upon realizing it was his trusted son, he stopped and coldly said, "If you don't have a good reason, I'll take your eyes out." Dien 13 immediately kneeled and said, "Adoptive father, forgive me. I made a mistake. I couldn't annihilate Thẩm Lãng's whole family." Dien Huan's eyes turned cold. He had highly valued this adopted son, yet he couldn't even carry out such a simple task. He had already received a large sum of money for his troubles. Dien 13 said, "Kim Jung from the Duke's mansion, with more than 10 warriors, took Thẩm Lãng's father, mother, and younger brother. They said they were going to the Duke's mansion to attend the wedding. They were carried on a huge palanquin." Immediately, Dien Huan shot up from his seat, his face turning pale. The woman, still on her knees, yelped in pain as she was kicked across the room. "Get out!" yelled Dien Huan. She scrambled and fled. Dien 13 said, "Adoptive father, who is getting married in the Duke's mansion? Is the heir taking a concubine? Thẩm Lãng couldn't possibly have climbed into the heir's relationship, could he? I heard the heir is also a fool, and these two fools are like 2 peas in a pod." Dien Huan said, "Do you think Thẩm Lãng is a fool?" Dien 13 thought for a moment and decisively shook his head. Dien Huan said, "The Duke's wedding is not a simple concubinary. It's a marriage." Upon hearing this, Dien 13's face turned pale as he shook his head. No way." Dien Huan said, "I also thought it was impossible." Dien 13 said, "Who is Thẩm Lãng? A poor country boy, worth less than a weed. And Kim Mộc Lan? Who is she? Perfect in martial arts, military strategy, beauty, and figure. The treasured daughter of a century-old noble family. Thẩm Lãng, even if his ancestors accumulated 10 generations of virtue, is not even worthy of a finger of Kim Mộc Lan. Even the Tzu family, with all their wealth, looked down on Thẩm Lãng. How could the Duke's mansion even consider him?" Dien Huan nodded in agreement. There was no way Thẩm Lãng could be with Kim Mộc Lan. They were worlds apart. But now, the fact that Kim Jung had personally taken Thẩm Lãng's family to the Duke's wedding was strange. Dien Huan paced back and forth, a hint of unease in his eyes. "I'll go to the city. We need to prevent this from getting worse." This chapter revolves around the growing tension around Thẩm Lãng's mysterious connection with the Duke's mansion, causing panic among the power-hungry figures like Dien Huan, the Tzu family head, and others. It also foreshadows the deepening intrigue and looming dangers.
Thẩm Lãng takes the wedding oath. Not to mention others, even Thẩm Lãng himself deeply doubted whether he was truly the groom tonight, because throughout the day, apart from receiving meals, no one came to check on Thẩm Lãng. Even the servants delivering the food didn't say a word to him. The Duke didn't see him, nor did the Duchess. Miss Kim Mộc Lan didn't come to see him either, and even Kim Jung hadn't come to meet him. He felt completely forgotten in this guest room. He even began to suspect that the Duke's mansion had found a better candidate, because, from a certain perspective, there were so many more suitable candidates in the entire Huenvo city compared to him. How many young men in the city would be willing to jump through fire for Kim Mộc Lan? Finally, when dusk arrived, 2 maidservants, or rather, 2 middle-aged women in bright red robes with gold embroidery, entered. "Master Thumb, please bathe and change into your wedding attire. Prepare for the wedding." Being a son-in-law was somewhat like getting married, requiring the bride's family to prepare a dowry and hold the ceremony at the bride's family's home. Most of the time, the bride would wear a veil, sit in a flower sedan, make a round trip, and then return to her home. However, in more extreme cases, the groom would be asked to sit in the sedan with a veil, entering the bride's home to perform the wedding rites. In Huenvo City, it was customary and more traditional to have the groom, when becoming a son-in-law, ride in a flower sedan wearing a mask instead of a veil. This was very unusual, but it was one of the more extreme traditional practices in Huenvo City, and many young men preferred carrying a cane rather than becoming a son-in-law. At this moment, Thẩm Lãng wore a red robe with a silver mask on, sitting inside the flower sedan. First, they took him from the Duke's mansion to the temple, and then returned to perform the wedding ceremony. The entire Huenvu Duke's mansion was decorated with flowers and lights. Servants were everywhere. There weren't many guests, but over 100 people were present. More than half were from the Duke's mansion, while the rest were notable figures from Huenvu City, scholars, government officials, military officers, and outstanding martial artists. Usually, when the Duke's daughter got married, many guests would come, not only from the Zhang region, but even the governor's office and the royal family would send representatives. But today's wedding was rushed, so even the guests from the Zhang region couldn't attend. This was considered the most frugal wedding the Duke's mansion had ever held. In the grand hall, the guests chatted with each other, but their attention was primarily focused on the front door, eagerly awaiting to see who the groom would be. Kim Mộc Lan was the princess of Huenvu City. Who could be worthy of her? Who was worthy of such a woman? Even if he were to be a son-in-law, he would still make others envious, especially the young men whose faces were pale with jealousy. They were all wondering who the lucky man was who would marry Kim Mộc Lan. Even though he didn't receive an invitation, the black-robe gang leader Dian Huang was also thick-skinned enough to show up. He was deeply nervous, fearing that the groom would be Thẩm Lãng, which would be a disaster. However, at this moment, he overheard others talking about how glorious the Duke's mansion was and how great Kim Mộc Lan was. And many famous figures were loudly speculating about the groom. They mentioned names of talented young men, at least a graduate, a scholar, or a martial artist. A scholar? Don't joke. The groom is at least a doctor. Yes, Kim's family is not just a noble family, it's a powerful one. Many doctors, although talented, don't have strong backgrounds. Being a son-in-law of the Duke's mansion is a good deal, offering wealth and power. In the Ming Dynasty, there were no restrictions for son-in-laws to participate in the imperial exams, but that wasn't the case in our nation.
Yes, and Kim Mộc Lan is such a beautiful woman. How could anyone not be drooling over her? Yes, if you don't have the title of a doctor, you're dreaming of marrying Kim Mộc Lan. As for Thẩm Lãng, no one even mentioned his name, so how could it possibly be him? It seemed completely impossible, like comparing a toad to a swan. Thus, Dian Wang began to feel a little more at ease. At that moment, Jiang Tizin also stared at the door, his heart full of envy for the groom tonight. Who was Kim Mộc Lan? She was nearly every young man's dream woman in 100 miles, including Jiang Tizin. He knew why the wedding was so rushed. The Duke's mansion didn't want to marry off their daughter, but the Chuk family's marriage proposal team was already on their way. Jiang Tizin didn't care about that. In fact, he felt a little relieved. Kim Mộc Lan, such a beautiful and stunning woman, wasn't going to marry Chuk Hong Tuet, the so-called genius. He felt she deserved something better. Tu Tian noticed her fiancé's gaze and felt a pang of jealousy, but hid it well. Instead, she smiled beautifully and said, "I'm really curious. Which lucky man could be worthy of marrying Kim Mộc Lan tonight?" At that moment, the entire hall suddenly fell silent. The Duke and Duchess appeared, sitting at the seats of honor. Standing next to them was a young, somewhat plump man, clearly uncomfortable. He was the Duke's heir. The crowd's expressions were filled with shock as they realized that the time for the wedding rites was about to begin and the groom would soon be revealed. Bang, bang, bang! Suddenly, firecrackers sounded outside. The groom had arrived. Everyone immediately rushed forward, eager to see this incredibly lucky man. As the crowd's eyes locked on, the palanquin slowly moved toward the door. The curtain was lifted, and the groom stepped forward. He wore a silver mask, so his face wasn't clear. He was somewhat slender, but had a long, graceful figure with white hands, probably a scholar. The crowd murmured, speculating that he must be a talented man from Viet Quoc. "Here comes the bride," Kim Mok Lan appeared. Almost all the men held their breath, and the women opened their eyes wide with jealousy, because Kim Mok Lan, the princess, wasn't wearing a red bridal gown. Instead, she wore a silver dress. The dress was somewhat neutral and fitted her figure perfectly, giving off a dignified and powerful aura. This was a strong signal that Kim Mok Lan was a warrior and that she would fight for the Duke's mansion for the rest of her life, never allowing anyone else to control her. The silver dress highlighted her seductive figure, her prominent chest, her seductive waist, her perky bottom, and her long, sexy legs, which left the men breathless. In an instant, all the men looked at the groom with even more jealousy. Kim Mok Lan had no expression, as she had already made up her mind to sacrifice her happiness for her family. But Thẩm Lãng, with his messy reputation, was truly the best choice for her family. However, even though she sacrificed for her family, marrying someone like this still made Kim Mok Lan feel heartbroken. The ceremony proceeded, but as the ritual progressed, there was an interruption that shocked everyone even further. This chapter captures the tension, surprise, and drama surrounding Thẩm Lãng's wedding to Kim Mok Lan, as many characters, including Dien Wang and others, are shocked and confused by the unexpected events, especially the reveal of the groom's identity. The ceremony culminates in a highly anticipated revelation.
The wedding is joyful and pretentious. Tu Tian Tian really couldn't even dream of it. Tonight's groom is Shen Long. How could it be him? Even if the sun comes out, it's impossible. Who is Jin Mulan, the high and mighty goddess? Who is Shen Long, a mentally challenged idiot, a useless person who can't even wear clothes well? Moreover, the other day, she just expelled Shen Long from the family and also falsely accused him of stealing and toying with the maidservants. The Earl of Huangwu's mansion has such a high lineage, how could it choose such a vagabond to be the son-in-law? No, she absolutely can't accept such a result. Shen Long, if you were expelled from our family, then you should be as lowly as dust. At best, turn into a pile of dog shit on the ground and let people step on you. Now, you unexpectedly marry a more beautiful, more noble woman than me? How is that possible? Isn't this heaven joking? Zhang Jin's side completely wants to vomit blood with jealousy. Based on what? Jin Mulan, this peerless beauty, even he, Zhang Jin, doesn't dare to hope too far, but marry Shen Long, this trash. Ha 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 ha. Zhang Jin suddenly laughed out loud. Everyone couldn't help but look at him. Zhang Jin said, "Miss Jin Mulan, your wedding is fake. It's basically a conspiracy." Jin Mulan coldly said, "What makes you say this?" Zhang Jin pointed at Shen Long and said, "You all know who this person is. He is called Shen Long. He studied for 10 years and still couldn't recognize 1,000 words and was expelled from the Hanshui Town Academy. After marrying into the Zhu family, he was expelled because he stole property and played with the maidservants. The Earl of Huangwu's mansion has such a high lineage, how could it choose such a vagabond to be the son-in-law?" "That's right, right," the surrounding handsome young men couldn't help but shout. They also felt that this was fake. How could Miss Jin Mulan marry such a trash? Zhang Jin opened his head after a while and immediately sent a glance towards the crowd. He was, after all, the son of a prefect, and ending up tearing the paper with Shen Long was too crude and low-level. In the crowd, a scholar walked out, raised his voice and said, "This point I can prove, because I and him together had read the book in Han Shui Town School. Shen Long is a brain dead." Shen Long recognized this person, named Yan Hung. Indeed, he was in Han Shui Town School in the same school. The crucial moment ran out to poke you. Sure enough, they are all acquaintances.
This Yanheng poor family background originally not qualified to participate in today's evening wedding. But he passed the middle school exam after the exam and had worshipped a good teacher, was retired in the previous home of Xuanwu city advocate Ba Yan, so followed along to come. Of course, he not only flattered Zhang Ba Yan, but also Zhang Jin, so reluctantly climbed up to the Zhang family prefect relationship. Before in Hanshui Town School, Yanheng was the school bully. Shenlong was the super school scum. He would not even glance at him, but didn't think that at this time, Shenlong actually married into the Wuzhu family, actually welcomed the Wuzhu city princess Jin Mulan as his wife. How could he bear this? So there was no need to leave anything to chance and immediately put forth a claim to perfect. Shenlong stood up, indifferently said, "Yanheng, you said I am brain dead, but have evidence?" Scholar Yanheng said, "Ha, ha, you read books for 10 years and still can't recognize 1,000 words. Isn't this evidence? Like this, I write some words. If you recognize, I won't say you are brain dead. If you don't recognize, then you are. How about it?" Shu Tiantian immediately wanted to speak up to stop, but Shenlong first replied, "Okay. Get paper and ink." Scholar Yanheng said, "From the beginning, he still had some fear and anxiety. This place, after all, was the Earl's mansion, not him, like a scholar could act recklessly, so both legs were shaking. But at this moment, seeing everyone supporting him, like the stars surrounding the moon, Yanheng didn't have any anxiety, only thought to stand out extremely, best to directly break up Shenlong and Jin Mulan's marriage. The Earl's mansion naturally didn't want to give paper and ink, but before registering the gift, there were several vice ink pens, so immediately someone went to get them. Yanheng took the brush pen, on the crimson paper, wrote down a few words. Everyone went forward to see. The result behind his back was a little cold, in the heart, secretly drew a breath of cold air. Because these words looked familiar, but they were not familiar.
It's really too strange, not to mention the martial artists here don't know each other. Some even don't know the scholars who have achieved fame. For no reason, who would accept this or that title? And yet completely can't be used. Even can say so 10 scholars inside, but actually there are 8 can't fully recognize Yang Sheng wrote these 3 words. Really too difficult. Just this extremely simple 3 words, if you recognize, you are not brain dead. If you don't recognize, then admit you are, Yang Sheng proudly said. Jin Mulan's beautiful eyes glanced immediately frowned. These words he naturally recognized. Although she practiced martial arts but also read a lot of books, but these words are really too strange. If not coincidentally in a certain book C, basically will not recognize because these words are basically not needed. Shenlang went forward to see these 3 words are Ang, Tuk, Illa. Indeed very difficult, Although he is a medical university master graduate, but these 3 words he only received the first one, the next 2 are not familiar. Ha ha ha, not familiar? These 3 words you can receive one are all amazing, Scholar Yang Sheng said. Honestly say you don't know. Admit that you are a stupid child, read books for 10 years, and these simple 3 words are not familiar. Here many people are embarrassed. They also read books for more than 10 years, even passed the scholar exam. Even some people passed the bachelor exam, but also were not familiar with this place's individual words, Although Shenlang is not familiar, but following him and transmigrating here also has an alien laptop, Inside, what dictionary is there as easy as turning over the hand to look up. Moreover, now this alien laptop in his mind has become more advanced. Shenlang only needs to use his eyes to glance, almost immediately can get the answer. Moreover, there are still many kinds of answers. At this time, everyone looked at Shenlang, waiting for him to be embarrassed. Shenlang said, "This first word is the same as goose, is a kind of plant, can be used as medicine, comes from Jingxi Xiaoya,
The verses wound fresh, good fake oa, in the middle ah. This word just came out. Yan Sheng was slightly assurged. This word, although is the simplest, but Shenlang this trash should not recognize ah. However, he is very confident. The next two words Shenlang is unlikely to know. However, Shenlang did not stop at all, then opened his mouth and said, "This second word is self-recited to read, 1 solution because there is a flawed yad, 2 solution because the royal family meaning." Still not waiting for Yang Sheng to be surprised, Shenlang did not stop at all and said again, "This third type of self is really extremely rare, and there are many kinds of readings. The first type of self-constructing is the meaning of constructing. The second type of self-constructing is the meaning of connecting from top to bottom. The third type of self-constructing is the meaning of retreating backwards. The fourth type of self-constructing is the ancient family lineage, originally with the ancient Zhang clan. This world's history had been destroyed too, and later on many ancient Chinese books were excavated and they were treated as the foundation of civilization. Therefore, many anecdotes came from these excavated books and were not the history of this world, but the records in the files, and they also became history." After speaking, Shenlang said to the scholar Yang Sheng, am I right?" Yang Sheng didn't dare believe looking at Shenlang. Finally, this word he only knew 2 kinds of reading. Is erect, same one, same sound. The remaining 2 kinds he also didn't understand. This Shenlang isn't a stupid child? Before reciting book time is extremely stupid. Even normal most word won't recite, let alone this kind of extremely strange word. Shenlang toward Yang Sheng teacher before Shenwu oral lord said, "Zhang Dairen, you are knowledgeable, literary, and martial all-arounder. You said these 3 words but recited correctly." That white-bearded old city lord fiercely glared at his disciple Yang Sheng, smiled and said, "All correct." As soon as this word came out, everyone was surprised, especially Zhang Jin and X2 Tian. Shenlang is what kind of goods? X2 Tian is the most clear These 3 words, how many strange, she completely understand especially the last one word X210 also don't know, and Shenlang read books for 10 years are not too young stupid waste, actually understand Hey, how is that possible? Shenlang continued, "Nyan Hung, if play no words, I also write a few words to make you recognize." "How?" Scholar Nyan Hung coldly laughed and said, "Just by you? What words I don't recognize? Ridiculous." Shenlang took the brush, dipped the ink, directly on the surface wrote down many words. Dadwa, Data, Nunthu, La Nung, Thuan, Nudok So, Butch Suong. After writing, Shenlang asked, "Nen Hung, these words you all recognize these. You want to recognize beyond 4 words. I will admit you." Scholar Nyan Hung looked at these dozens of words and immediately eyes all must be dizzy. This is what kind of word? However, there were a few things inside he clearly recognized and he couldn't help but blurt out, "I'm so stupid."
The major figure's first move stuns the entire audience. The scholar Nyan Hung recited the 4 characters, and immediately many people burst into laughter, including Kim Mok Lan, who couldn't help but smile. In an instant, it was as if 100 flowers had bloomed, making her even more beautiful and captivating. However, Yan Hung's expression immediately darkened. After reciting the words, Yan Hung realized that he had been tricked. However, it was too late to take back his words. He immediately became furious, trembling all over as he pointed at Thẩm Lãng, saying, You are a fool." Thẩm Lãng said, "Yes, you are a fool. Yan Hung, you've always been so honest, haven't you?" Yan Hung was almost furious to the point of exploding and was about to step forward to argue, to make a point of winning. At this moment, his teacher, the former ruler of Manhwa City, calmly said, "Step aside. Are you trying to embarrass yourself even more?"
Yan Hung, puffing with anger, stepped aside. Feeling the mocking gazes from everyone, he wished he could just sink into the ground. For someone like him, who treasured his reputation as a scholar above all else, being called a fool was a disgrace he could not tolerate. Even during the imperial exams, this would have a significant impact. Enraged, Yan Hung said, "Duke, this is your duke's mansion, and Thẩm Lãng is your son-in-law. Are you really going to let him humiliate the scholarly reputation of the Kim family like this?" The Duke of Manhwa smiled but said nothing. He couldn't respond to a mere scholar. If it weren't for Yan Hung's teacher being the former ruler of Manhwa City, Yan Hung wouldn't have even been allowed into this grand hall. If he had to answer such a lowly figure's questions, it would tire him out. And as for Yan Hung's blatant questioning of the Duke's wedding, the Duke had already shown leniency. If it weren't for the fact that Yan Hung's teacher held some influence, this behavior would have been immediately corrected. Thẩm Lãng chuckled. "Yan Hung, those 4 words were what you said. I didn't say a single vulgar word." Thẩm Lãng continued, "As for corrupting the Kim family's reputation, don't worry. My Kim family is powerful enough that even a fool like me couldn't ruin our reputation. The reputation of the Kim family is in the hearts of the people, in our loyalty to the country and the Duke. It doesn't depend on a few shameless scholars like you." At these words, the Duke of Manhwa was a little surprised. He felt that Thẩm Lãng wasn't as bad as he had initially thought. Moreover, Thẩm Lãng seemed to understand him quite well. The Duke's leniency was out of respect for the people of Manhwa City. However, he wasn't a man who cherished every little thing. A son-in-law insulting people wasn't a big deal, as long as it was done with proper etiquette. Through Thiên, hearing what Thẩm Lãng had said couldn't help but be shocked. Could it really be Thẩm Lãng, the man who had once been so honest and quiet, now speaking so cunningly? After being expelled from the Thusi family, had he changed this much? "Shameless," Trung Tun couldn't help but mutter under his breath. At that moment, right after the wedding ceremony, Thẩm Lãng was already loudly proclaiming his allegiance to the Kim family. Was he really clinging to them? Didn't he know his own position? But Thẩm Lãng's words had provoked a major figure. The former ruler of Manhwa City, Trang Bagyun, was not only Yan Hung's teacher, but also a renowned scholar. Previously, when Thẩm Lãng insulted Yan Hung, Trang Bagyun thought it was just youthful play. However, now that Thẩm Lãng kept calling the scholars shameless, it seemed as though he was slapping his face directly. "Thẩm Lãng, it seems you are quite familiar with ancient characters." Thẩm Lãng replied, "I wouldn't say I'm an expert, just a little understanding. I have a character here. My students are unable to recognize it. Would you mind explaining its meaning for them?" Trang Bagyun asked. Upon hearing this, everyone immediately paid close attention. The teacher had stepped up to the stage to confront Thẩm Lãng, and this was about to become a battle of wits. Trang Bagyun, the former ruler of Manhwa City, was a well-known scholar, especially skilled in researching ancient texts. After retiring, he had opened a school in the city, and many scholars had sought him as a teacher. His knowledge was well respected. As the Duke of Manhwa, who controlled the city, allowed this conflict to unfold, it was clear this had political implications. Since the Duke's office had taken over the position of city ruler over a decade ago, there had been an ongoing struggle for power and influence. Thẩm Lãng smiled. "If Trang Bagyun wants to test me, I'd be happy to try." Neither the Duke of Manhwa nor Kim Mộc Lan intended to stop the challenge. Thẩm Lãng had already regained some face, and losing to Trang Bagyun wasn't an issue. Trang Bagyun was a renowned figure. Losing to him wasn't a disgrace, but a recognition of his scholarship. Upon seeing his teacher step in for him, Yan Hung immediately became elated.
He rushed to prepare ink for Drang Bagyun, then handed him the brush.
After receiving the brush, Chung Bang-on wrote a character. Everyone crowded around, and Kim Mok Lan also looked closely. Good character, elegant and profound. Only someone with decades of skill could write like this. After finishing, Chung Bang-on stepped back and everyone cheered. However, despite the praise, no one could recognize the character he had written. Chung Bang-on's handwriting is truly remarkable, someone said, but what is this character? I don't know. No idea. Everyone shook their heads in confusion, unable to identify the character. It didn't matter if they were scholars or not. Even Kim Mok Lan and the Duke of Yuanwu couldn't recognize it. Someone commented, Chung Bang-on likes to study ancient texts. This character must have come from an ancient inscription, something extremely rare, not found in any books, so no one can recognize it. Upon hearing this, Chung Bang-on felt quite pleased with himself. This character indeed came from an ancient inscription he had discovered while researching. It was something no one else could understand, and it hadn't appeared in any texts, so only those who had seen it before would recognize it. Thẩm Lãng stepped forward and glanced at the character. To his surprise, it was a small seal script. This character was quite simple. It was a stylized form of the symbol for yuan, the modern symbol for currency. Though everyone in modern China was familiar with it, in this ancient world, it was absolutely unheard of. What it meant or how to pronounce it was something Thẩm Lãng couldn't figure out. In the Dayan dynasty, aside from a very small group of scholars who specialized in ancient inscriptions, most people didn't know how to use small seal script for writing. It was an obscure form of writing only loved by a niche group of people. So this character was particularly difficult for Thẩm Lãng to decipher. If it were based solely on his own knowledge, he would definitely have lost. But thanks to the Alienware laptop he carried, which was now an integrated part of his mind, he could easily access the answers, even multiple answers, with just a glance. The Duke of Yuanwu said, Thẩm Lãng, this character is extremely difficult. If it weren't for my research of ancient inscriptions, no one would recognize it. It's fine if you don't know. He then added, your parents didn't want to attend the ceremony, but now you and Mok Lan can proceed with the wedding rites. This was the Duke's way of saving Thẩm Lãng from further embarrassment. Chung Bang-on, the former ruler, was too important a figure to be bothered by a small challenge from Thẩm Lãng. But the real challenge was how he handled it. He was clearly enjoying the spectacle. Thẩm Lãng said, Chung Bang-on, if I'm not mistaken, you don't know how to pronounce this character, do you? You probably know its meaning because you studied ancient inscriptions, but you can't pronounce it correctly. Indeed, that's true, Chung Bang-on said. But understanding the meaning is more important than pronunciation, isn't it? Thẩm Lãng smiled. It's interesting. I happen to know how to pronounce this character. Impossible, Nan Hong explained. My teacher said that only the context of the ancient inscriptions can explain the meaning of this character. No one knows how to pronounce it. Thẩm Lãng replied, if I know how to pronounce it, then what should you do? Perhaps you should slap yourself for speaking nonsense and calling me a fool. Nan Hong said, what if you're wrong or don't recognize it? Thẩm Lãng replied, then I'll slap myself. All right, deal, Nan Hong said. Let everyone witness it. Chung Bang-on didn't intervene because politically it was a matter for the Duke's office. Thẩm Lãng had been too arrogant tonight, so a little lesson was deserved. Thẩm Lãng said, this character can be pronounced the same way as Ren. Haha, Nan Hong said. You say it's Ren. Who can prove it? Thẩm Lãng said, the meaning of this character is probably related to something else. At that moment, the former ruler, Chung Bang-wan, looked at Thẩm Lãng in disbelief. This was impossible. How could Thẩm Lãng,
a fool, understand this ancient character and even know how to pronounce it.
Opening voice, quiet, tense, as if something is about to happen. Secret discovery voice, shocked, excited, full of surprise. Dialogue voice, sharp, strong, tense, as Shenlong and Dian Huang confront each other. Dealing voice, decisive, scheming, and full of confidence. Change in attitude voice, soft, confused, as Shenlong realizes the price and the reason. Ending voice, decisive, strong, confident, and ruthless, as Shenlong prepares to plot his revenge. 26. Shock at 4 sights, a great wife, Mộc Lan. At this moment, it was truly impossible to describe the shock that Trung Bong Non felt inside. Although he had never met Thum Long before, he had heard many things about him, and he was thought to be a mentally challenged, lowly young man. Now, Thum Long recognized this ancient small seal script, a script that no one else in the room could identify. And not only did he recognize it, but he also knew how to pronounce it. This was too unusual. Scholar Yan Heng, standing beside him, laughed and said, "Teacher, is he just making things up?" At that moment, all eyes were on Trung Bong Non. He had to directly deny Thum Long's answer, and everyone would believe him, making it impossible for anyone to defend Thum Long. But the ancient inscription they had uncovered wasn't just Trung Bong Non's work. 2 other highly respected individuals had worked on it as well, and the meaning of this Ua symbol had been confirmed through their collective research. If Trung Bong Non publicly denied Thum Long's answer now, there was a good chance that he would be publicly humiliated in the future, and his reputation would be completely ruined. But Thum Long wasn't worth taking such a risk for. Seeing his teacher's expression, Yan Heng grew uneasy and spoke again. "Teacher, is Thum Long really making things up? He clearly doesn't understand the meaning of this character." This student was obviously trying to manipulate the situation and pressure his teacher to change his stance. Trung Bong Non shot a cold glance at Yan Heng and then smiled, saying, "Young Master Thum Long truly understands characters well. Even such an obscure script, he can distinguish it and even knows how to pronounce it. Truly impressive for such a young man." At this, the entire room went silent in shock. Is Thum Long really this incredible? The character written by Trung Bong Non was something no one else in the room could recognize, but Thum Long, the so-called useless man, knew it and could even pronounce it? Wasn't he supposed to be a useless, uneducated man? How could he be so skilled? Thum Long looked at Yan Heng and said, "Brother Yan, earlier you said that if I won, I should slap myself. You are a scholar, one of the brightest students from our Handui town school, so I assume you wouldn't back down, right?" At this, everyone's gaze shifted towards Yan Heng. While everyone wanted to see Thum Long humiliated, it would be quite amusing to watch Yan Heng slap himself, as it was a test of his pride. If Yan Heng were to back down, no one would care. But now that everyone was watching, especially with the Duke of Huanvu present, the situation had turned awkward. "Thum Long, I will remember this moment," Yan Heng said coldly, before slapping his own face with great force. Bang! A crisp sound echoed in the room. Thum Long had slapped himself so hard, perhaps with the hope that this would make him feel better for the humiliation. Thum Long enjoyed the sound of it. "Goodbye!" Yan Heng, his face red with shame, stormed out angrily. At that moment, the Duke of Huanvu spoke. Thumb Long, you should take Mok Long to meet your parents. Let the banquet begin." With a command, food and wine were quickly brought to the tables, and everyone eagerly took their seats. Unfortunately, there was one person who didn't see this spectacle. That person was Wang Lian, the lord of Huendo City and Thumb Long's rival. He had originally been the favored one to marry Mok Long, but after failing in that competition, he chose not to attend tonight's wedding. Thumb Long and Kim Mok Lan made their way to the back courtyard to meet their parents. Wait! At this moment, Chuk Lim, a true noble, suddenly called. This was a major figure, and if he really wanted to make things difficult for Thumb Long, the Duke of Huenvu would have a hard time. Chuk Lim looked at Thumb Long and said, "You're quite interesting. I'll remember you." These words weren't exactly a threat, but they carried a subtle pressure. Being watched by the Chuk family was certainly uncomfortable. Thumb Long, as if he hadn't understood, bowed and said, "Thank you, Lord Chuk, for your support." "Ha ha ha ha!" Chuk Long laughed loudly. The Duke of Huenvu then said, "Don't you want to meet your parents? Don't keep your elders waiting." "Yes, father-in-law," Thumb Long said. "Shameless!" Almost everyone young in the room muttered in unison. How could Thumb Long be so eager to call him father-in-law? It was truly shameless. Thumb Long's parents, feeling their humble status, didn't want to appear in the grand hall. The Duke of Huenvu had prepared fine clothes for them, but they still chose to wear their everyday clothing, which was a little worn. Thumb Long's younger brother, Thumb Jen, wanted to wear the Duke's clothes, but his father scolded him and stopped him. Both of his parents sat uncomfortably, clearly out of place. They longed to return to their humble home, even if it was just a simple mud hut.
Thẩm Lãng's father, Thẩm Vạn, still had a lingering cough, but forced himself to hold it in. Thẩm Lãng, along with Kim Mộc Lan, entered the back courtyard and immediately bowed, saying, "Son bows to his parents. I have been unfilial." His mother quickly stepped forward to lift him, but she didn't expect Kim Mok Lan to also bow and say, "Daughter-in-law bows to my in-laws." At this, Thẩm Lãng's family was taken aback. Kim Mok Lan, the princess of Huenvo City, the daughter of a noble family, was bowing to Thẩm Lãng's parents, humble farmers, without the slightest hesitation. In that instant, Thẩm Lãng's affection for her grew immensely. No, Thẩm Lãng's mother immediately wanted to lift Kim Mok Lan, but upon seeing her beautiful and dignified appearance, she pulled her hand back. After all, she had worked as a farmer for years, and her hands were rough and dark. Even though she had washed them, they still looked dirty, so she didn't feel she was worthy to touch Kim Mok Lan. Kim Mok Lan gently placed Thẩm Lãng's mother's hands on hers and softly said, "Thank you, mother." In an instant, Thẩm Lãng's parents looked at Kim Mok Lan with warmth in their eyes. She was a kind-hearted woman who would never mistreat Thẩm Lãng. "Let's offer a toast to our parents-in-law," Kim Mok Lan said. "Father, you're not well, so let me offer you sweet rice wine instead." Good, Thẩm Lãng's father repeatedly said. After that, Kim Mok Lan poured wine for the elders, and she and Thẩm Lãng bowed to offer the toast. As soon as the wine entered their mouths, Thẩm Lãng's parents felt a bit tipsy. Thẩm Lãng's younger brother, Thẩm Chen, couldn't wait to finish his sweet rice wine, and seeing how kind Kim Mok Lan was, couldn't help but say, "Sister-in-law, you're so beautiful." Immediately, Thẩm Lãng's father almost slapped him. "Thank you," Kim Mok Lan said kindly, then turned to Thẩm Lãng and said, "You must have something to say to your parents. I'll go out and greet the guests." "All right," Thẩm Lãng said. Once Kim Mok Lan left, the atmosphere seemed to lighten. His parents relaxed a little. Although she was incredibly kind to them, Kim Mok Lan was still the Duke's daughter, and Thẩm Lãng's parents could never help but feel inferior when facing her. Thẩm Lãng said,
"Father, mother, I'm sorry. I've disappointed you." His parents had never wanted him to become a son-in-law, whether in the Zhu family or the Duke's family. Being a son-in-law was a lowly position, barely higher than a servant. If he couldn't win over his wife's family, he might as well be lower than a servant. Moreover, his parents still hoped that Thẩm Lãng would continue the family line, even if it meant marrying a widow from the village. At least their child would carry the family name, which was better than living as a servant. His father, Thẩm Lãng, said with deep emotion, "Son, you don't need to apologize. You did this to save us, to save our whole family. I'm the one to blame, dragging you into this." Although he didn't know the exact details, he could guess what had happened after seeing the men sent by Dian Huang earlier in the day. As he spoke, tears welled up in his eyes. He truly felt guilty and regretful. He believed that if he hadn't been so powerless, Thẩm Lãng wouldn't have had to become a son-in-law. Thẩm Chen whispered, "I think it's great. Our sister-in-law is wonderful, and she's so beautiful. No one in the village is as beautiful as her. By the way, brother, can I talk to you about something?" He asked, "What is it?" His brother said, "Since you have such a beautiful wife, can't we ask that widow from the village to marry me?" At this, his mother couldn't hold back any longer and slapped her younger son on the back of the head. "She's beautiful, but if your brother stays in the Duke's mansion, he'll still have to come home. The widow should be saving herself for your brother," she said. "I visited her a few days ago, and she clearly seemed interested in him." Thẩm Chen looked up to the heavens in silent exasperation. "Mother, really? I'm your son too." After a quick meal with his family, Thẩm Lãng said, "Father, why don't you stay the night? It's getting late." His father replied, "We're not used to staying here." So Thẩm Lãng arranged for 2 carriages and took his parents back home, while the Duke and Mộc Lan left the banquet to send them off. "Brother, don't see them off. Go to the bridal chamber. Your wife is waiting for you," his brother said. "Time with your wife is more precious than gold." Thẩm Lãng waved his hand and made his way to the bridal chamber.